What it do, YouTube? I am your boy, Tony Vogue, the boy zombie slayer. I have a question for y'all. Is it possible to be scared to death? Well, today we react to a shrouded hand video on a British TV show on the BBC that traumatized the nation. Let's hit it. That obviously didn't go right, but that did.
Is it possible to create something that's so terrifying that it literally scares people to death? In 1992, the BBC broadcast a show that caused children to vomit, grown men to soil themselves, and pregnant women to go into labour.
Wow.
It also, unfortunately, may have caused one young man to take his own life 5 days after watching it.
Damn, what did they broadcast, son? I need to eat a cookie.
Hello everybody, Shrouded Hand here, and today we're taking a look at the horror masterpiece known as Ghostwatch. An ingenious hoax so controversial that it's never been shown on British television ever again. This video is actually part of a collaboration with Proper Horror Show. I'm going to be talking about the controversy and the aftermath of Ghostwatch in this video, and on Proper Horror Show's channel there'll be a video where me and her discuss the show itself in depth. I'll put a link to that in the description, so go check that out. You can watch them in either order. It was Halloween night 1992, 9:25 PM. The show had been advertised in the TV Times as a drama and mockumentary.
Come on, guys,
the announcer before the show indicates that we're about to watch a drama that blurs the lines between reality and fiction, and the intro credits say that it was written by Stephen Volk. I do have to wonder if the 9:25 time slot was deliberately chosen so that people would miss the first few minutes, as most shows would have started at past. This was 1992, TV wasn't on demand. You couldn't just rewind the live television or press a button to get a synopsis on screen. If you missed the beginning of a show, that was tough. And if you did miss the first few minutes of Ghostwatch and you hadn't read the TV Times, you'd have a pretty hard time identifying this as a work of fiction.
Wow.
The premise of the show was simple: a live ghost hunt. An unassuming suburban home in North London had been the site of a number of strange happenings. The family inside terrorised by what appeared to be poltergeist activity and an entity that the children had named Pipes. For Halloween, the BBC was sending a crew of investigators, including popular TV presenters Sarah Green and Craig Charles, to investigate the house live. Back in the studio, Michael Parkinson was joined by Dr. Lynn Pascoe to analyse the live footage, as well as taking calls from the public who had called into the live phone-in number.
Oh god.
Of course, it wasn't really live. The whole thing had been pre-recorded weeks before Halloween. The plot was loosely based on the Enfield poltergeist, the same events that inspired The Conjuring 2. It was set up to look as realistic as possible. Everything was filmed in the house as if it was live, giving it a grainy, shaky, handheld quality. Years before, found footage movies made this sort of thing old hats. It was also 10 years before Most Haunted first aired, so people hadn't become jaded by years of these cookie-cutter ghost investigation shows. 11 million people tuned into that broadcast, many of them children who'd been allowed to stay up late for Halloween. Those who knew it was a hoax were probably having a good time, but many people didn't realise, and they started to panic, thinking they were watching real events.
Stop it, Susie! Suzanne, you're coming with me. Suzanne? You're coming... Suzanne? Listen to me, Susie! Susie?
The helpline number on screen was real. Viewers of a certain age might remember it as the live and kicking number, so ringing it would get you through to BBC Studios. Apparently if you rang the number that night, you got a recorded message telling you that Ghostwatch was indeed a work of fiction, and then you were transferred through to one of the 5 telephone operators standing by. However, the show's producers vastly underestimated how many people would be fooled by the show. The phone line quickly got jammed, and most people ringing it simply got an engaged tone. This might even have heightened the realism of the show. Towards the end, the ghost begins to interfere with the electronics. Viewers finding the phone lines jammed might even have imagined that it was the evil influence of Pipes himself.
Oh my god. Mass hysteria. That is mass hysteria right there. That's a mass psychosis. God damn.
I'm not going to give away the ending, but in the final few minutes things go so over the top that even if you did believe it was real, you'd probably realise it was fiction by the end. However, a lot of people didn't see the end. Many were so scared that they switched it off before the conclusion. Some people watched the whole thing, but they were so absorbed by the realism of the show that they were able to entirely suspend their disbelief. They simply failed to spot the clues. They didn't even notice in the end credits where they list the actors, including revealing that Pipes was played by somebody called Keith Ferrari.
Keith Ferrari.
Panicked calls to the BBC television studios continued into the night. The BBC even put out an announcement to reassure people that Ghostwatch wasn't real, but by that point the damage was done. The nation had been duped, and Pipes had entered the minds of thousands of traumatized people.
Wow, that kind of sucks. It's kind of like War of the Worlds when it was broadcast on the radio, if anyone knows of that.
And I'm not kidding about the reaction to this when I said at the beginning that it caused grown men to soil themselves. A woman really did send a bill to the show's producers for a new pair of trousers for her husband because Ghostwatch had made him literally crap his pants. Apparently 3 women went into labour whilst watching it too.
We actually built our Saturday night with the children around watching it.
But your son was upset?
Yes. Within 5 minutes, nothing had happened. He reacted instantly. He was very distressed instantly to something very sinister in the presentation, and nothing had actually happened.
I was working with my wife in another room, and my youngest child, who was 10, rushed out of the room, vomited in the hall, was absolutely ashen-faced, wouldn't even talk about it for 2 or 3 hours. It was at 1 o'clock in the morning that I got her to talk about it, and she wouldn't sleep in her own bed for 2 nights.
Well, I thought it was one sick joke, the way that it was based around children, the way that the children were involved in the actual story. Why did you have to bring the children into it? But it wasn't funny. It wasn't funny at all.
I thought that Mullet Guy story about the kids vomiting might be an over-exaggeration, but I was chatting to a friend of mine about Ghostwatch on Messenger, and he said when he was a kid he had to watch it with a bucket in front of him because he felt sick with anxiety. As for me, sadly, I wasn't allowed to watch it. My parents were probably right to stop me from seeing it. I would have been traumatised. I was a bit of a soft kid, and I was absolutely obsessed with ghosts at that age. I don't know how many sleepless nights I had lying awake listening to every creak and knock in the house, thinking it was some restless spirits coming to get me, and that was without seeing Ghostwatch. I was also completely gullible, and other kids used to make up ghost stories to tell me because they knew I would believe anything they said.
God damn.
But still, it's a massive regret of mine that I never got to watch Ghostwatch when it first aired. Feeling the impact that show had. It's something that I'll never get to experience watching horror movies as a cynical adult. I do remember going into school the Monday after it aired. There was a huge buzz among all the kids that had seen it. Ghostwatch had aired on the Saturday night and it was now Monday morning, but even so, a lot of kids were still pretty worked up about it, so much so that my teacher had to sit the class down and tell everyone that the show wasn't real. So even though I didn't get to see it myself back then, I still have a good idea of how it affected the minds of small children. In fact, Ghostwatch was the first TV show known to have caused PTSD in children. In one case, a boy had been frightened by Ghostwatch and had refused to watch the ending. He subsequently expressed fear of ghosts, witches and the dark, constantly talking about them and seeking reassurance. He suffered panic attacks, refused to go upstairs alone, and slept with the bedroom light on. He had nightmares and daytime flashbacks and banged his head to remove thoughts of ghosts. He became increasingly clingy and was reluctant to go to school or to allow his mother to go out without him. Another case study reports that immediately after watching Ghostwatch, a child also described as a warrior had complained of being frightened. He felt sick and cried easily and refused to go into his bedroom, complaining of someone watching him there. he was consequently allowed to sleep in his parents' room, where he talked excessively about his fears. His parents were drawn into a discussion and had to reassure him repeatedly throughout the night.
Dang, this really affected people. Like, really.
And so this gives you a good idea of the kind of terror that this program generated back in 1992. And it brings us to the case that I alluded to at the beginning of the video.
Shit.
The death of Martin Denham. Martin was an 18-year-old factory worker from Nottingham. He had learning difficulties and was thought to have a mental age of a 13-year-old child. After watching Ghostwatch, there was a peculiar change in Martin's behaviour. His stepfather described him as being in a trance, as if hypnotised by the show. They kept asking him if he was alright, but he seemed distant and preoccupied.
Something else about this.
That night, he refused to turn the light off when he went to bed, which was unusual for him. The central heating in his house would make banging noises, just like the banging noises that pipes made in the show. Despite his mother and stepfather's best attempts to reassure him, he became obsessed with the idea that the house was haunted. Sadly, 5 days after Ghostwatch aired, Martin Denham was found dead in Bestwood Park with a length of hosepipe around his neck.
What?
He was hanging from a tree known locally as the Witch Tree. In his pocket they found a note that read, "Mother, do not be upset. If there is ghosts, I will now be one, and I will always be with you as one."
God damn.
Somebody taking their own life is sinister enough, but for him to do it from the Witch Tree, and the fact that he used a hosepipe, it gives a very real-world death a feeling of an urban legend. Martin's fiancée, his mother and his stepfather were naturally furious with the BBC. They blamed Ghostwatch directly for Martin's death. The Denhams made a complaint to the Broadcasting Standards Commission, the BSC. Upon review, the BSC ruled that the BBC had a duty to do more than simply hint at the deception it was practicing on the audience. In Ghostwatch, there was a deliberate attempt to cultivate a sense of menace. They found that Ghostwatch was excessively distressing and graphic for that time of night, and that the presence in the programme of presenters familiar from children's programmes took some parents off guard in deciding whether their children could continue to view.
God damn.
And it's for this reason that Ghostwatch has never been aired on terrestrial TV ever again, although it is available on some streaming services and it was released on DVD.
You need to find that shit.
Now, I don't know how much Ghostwatch can be blamed for Martin Denham's death. I suppose what we'll never know is what other factors influenced his state of mind. Were there other events leading up to that Halloween night that might have played a role in his actions? It certainly seems that Ghostwatch acted as a sort of trigger, but it seems to me too simplistic to suggest that it was the sole cause of his death. Could somebody who wasn't already having dark thoughts be so affected by a single TV show that they'd hang themselves 5 days later? It's a question that unfortunately we'll never be able to answer.
Then again, like the effect it had on
it also
so
raises the
many
question of how much should we be allowed to blur the lines between fiction and reality? How much responsibility does TV have to make it clear that the show is fictional? I actually bought the TV Times from Halloween 1992 to take a look, and there's a big 2-page feature promoting Ghostwatch, and they do make it very clear that the show is a drama. The show also tells you at the beginning and the end that it is fiction, and they can't have predicted quite how strong a reaction it would have got. Still though, there is a sense of mischief to the show. You do get the impression that they were deliberately trying to fool people, at least to begin with. But if the aim of horror is to terrify people, then it needs to push some boundaries. Would Ghostwatch be so fondly remembered today if it hadn't traumatised people so much when it aired?
God damn, it really messed people up though.
Would it have had any kind of impact if the whole way through it was made explicitly clear that the viewer was watching a simple horror movie? On the other hand, I'm not trying to imply that a young man's death and a bunch of kids with PTSD was somehow worth it just so we could get a good horror experience. The events that followed Ghostwatch were tragic and unforeseeable. A good-natured hoax and a fun Halloween scare that seems to have sent one man down a very dark path. Ghostwatch concludes with the revelation that the live broadcast had acted as a kind of national seance, that the millions of viewers had somehow imbued Pipes with a power that extended far beyond the television screen. And
Pipes
I
is
suppose
real.
in a way they
It's a
really did achieve
conspiracy.
that. He may be a fictional monster, but that Halloween night, through the collective trauma of thousands of viewers, Pipes became a very real entity, able to reach out from the screen and possess people's minds, controlling their thoughts and behaviours long after the credits rolled. I wonder how many new haunted houses were created that night. So, thank you for watching this video. I don't know what order you're watching these in, but if you haven't watched my chat with Proper Horror Show yet, then go check that video out.
This was Shrouded Hand, one of my favorite channels to react to. Scared to Death. TV show that traumatized the nation. That was fascinating. Damn, it actually scared people to death. I am your boy Tony Vogue. Pop. Next.